and she is so nervous.
You see, like, you just discredit people who are saying very important things because they don't agree with your point of view. Alright, let's do this. Lgbqt girl says homosexuality isn't haram. Alright, let's see what they have to say.
It's a sin at all.
Bro, there's ijma. Anybody that says the act of homosexuality is not a sin is a kafir.
Astaghfirullah, bro.
Let's watch it, inshallah. So this is a video that I watched and I was nearly pulling my hair out.
They're different.
Due to one of the individuals there.
Oh, wait. I don't think it's clear. I'm the LGBTQT girl.
Where do you see in the Quran that it requires hijab? For me, in how I've read the Quran, the translation that I have, the word isn't required, it should. That women should cover their heads and cover their chests. And so that's why I hesitate with saying that it's an obligation, because it's more of a, I would say, should isn't must.
First thing to understand.
I didn't like how they edited that. I was saying in the context of this translation, in that verse that he read or recited, right before it, it's like Allah is saying, women should do this, da da da. And then it says, tell them to, put their... So that's why I think I was confusing it in my head. But when I said that, the whole line, I'm saying how I'm reading the translation, should isn't must, so that's why I was confused. Before that, when I actually when the discourse came up, I was like, only Allah can say if someone's good or not. Like, how am I to say someone's good or bad or whatever? Like, I don't know their heart.
Or a kafir, or...
Yeah, like, I don't know your heart. I don't know your relationship with Allah.
To solely say that, the Quran doesn't mention this is not good enough. You have to then refer to the Sunnah.
The Quran is not good enough.
It's actually crazy. The Quran is the only word, the only communication we have directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sure, the way some people practice their Islam, their faith, their belief, is that they have the word of Allah, which is the Quran, and then they have all these other things that you're talking about, but this is not a blanket statement.
Like, where does it say that? And he brings evidence and he goes, okay.
But that's good. She's taken it, but then
no. But why would she not? It's as if she had something and it just backfired. Like, okay, he knew what he was talking about.
It could just be her tone, the benefit of the doubt, that she just wants him to kind of give the proof.
Why would you do that?
Because
why would you give the proof?
What are you basing this off of?
If someone's telling you to believe in something, you have to ask them why. Especially when it's religion, when it's something that's telling you how to dictate your life. So you have to ask questions.
And this is the tradition.
Need to.
She was really nice.
Well, it's so profound, bro. She doesn't wear the hijab, yeah? And look at her mentality, bro. And then you've got someone on the other side, liberal, who got some sort of a hijab on, or the one with the niqab, who believes she's liberal, yeah?
That's
bro, it just shows you again, bro. Do not judge people from their outer garment. I believe she's 100 times better than the one who's questioning, like,
again,
does it?
Man's just went and said, this is why you can't make assumptions, and then proceeded to make an assumption.
The Prophet, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says that one of the biggest problems for the ummah is the sin of Lut, or the people of Lut. Again, we could just...
Someone said that someone else said, that someone said, that someone's sister said, that someone's brother said, that someone's neighbor said, that someone's auntie said. The Prophet said that. Yeah.
Just agree, this is not our... When it comes to religion, our personal opinion doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. Way.
She's shaking her head.
If you start diving in and wanting whatever
because he said personal opinion doesn't matter.
Where does it end?
Then you're just a literal slave to what other people are telling you.
Homosexuality...
Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional.
No, it's not emotional. She's not getting emotional. You can see from her tone, voice,
assumption.
She has heard this story. Yeah, it's a story, by the way. It's a made-up story. Yeah, from God knows who. And she is so nervous.
You see, like, you just discredit people who are saying very important things because they don't agree with your point of view. He's saying I'm making up the story that it's about condemning sexual assault.
No, like rape. You read it, and that is the story of these were guests that came, and these were men in the village, in the town of Lut, who went and were trying to bring dishonor onto the Prophet by going and raping these guests. Yeah. Who were disguised as angels. So this isn't a made-up story that she's just concocted or just heard somewhere. This is literally from the Quran, from the word of Allah.
Yeah. Whenever the story of Prophet Lut is told in the Quran, it's always told in the context of other communities who were dishonoring, who were humiliating their prophets. Rape is a huge problem, using your power to dominate someone else. Like whenever you see like in war zone areas, that is something that soldiers use to humiliate people.
Yeah.
Like that
Not
is something
even
that,
in war zones. Like
But,
this
yeah,
happens
everywhere.
everywhere. This
Yeah.
happens in our massages. This happens in Saudi Arabia, in Mecca, in Medina.
I think we're missing a crucial moment to be
Mhm.
able to use the story to condemn the things that are happening in our mosques. That is the thing that just gets me. Like, how are we missing that this is such an important part of the story to then condemn people who are having consensual relationships?
Yeah.
Not even sexual, but just condemning relationships, intimate relationships with someone who happens to have the same genitalia as them. There's so much beauty. There's so much beauty in this religion, in the Quran, that people take and just make it so rigid. And you have to remember, like, they're not Islam, right? Like, Islam is being devoted to Allah alone, submitting to the will of Allah. And that's going to look different for everyone's life.
Yeah.
So you have to have that personal relationship with Allah so you can hear and understand what Allah is telling you to submit to, what you need to get better at. How can you get to your higher self?
Sirine are unanimous that this is referring to homosexuality, the act of homosexuality, and homosexuality is a sin.
All the scholars that you agree with.
And then again, it's because certain people just rely on the Quran. That's why we said it's a four-pronged approach. You then go on the Hadith.
Dangerous, bro. It's in the Quran. Allah says the best of Hadith is the Quran.
Okay, so there's a recognition that the Quran doesn't explicitly say that the story of Lut alayhi salam is about homosexuality. The majority of the Hadith that are out there, they're not verified.
It's the same situation with the Bible, which is really insane that like Muslims are falling into the same thing that Christians were chastised for doing. Even more so in the Quran, Allah celebrates diversity in creation. Like when you look at the ayats where Allah is saying that I've created you different so that you can get to know each other.
Mm-hmm.
Where in the ayats that Allah is talking about like who women should cover up in front of.
Yeah.
Who they shouldn't, and the shouldn't list are men who have no desires towards women. Like, I don't know how clearer that can be, and I've heard people interpret that as, like, that means elderly men, and I think we know that, like, elderly men do have desires for women. One of the conservative sisters who was like, you know, the point of being with someone is procreation, and I was like, that's not true, you know, because there's people who naturally can't procreate. Like, there's people that Allah has made barren, right? So, like, what is their like? Then, and if we're committing to that logical reasoning, then they shouldn't get married. Yeah, like it'd be haram for them to get married because why are they getting married if they can't procreate? But you're never going to commit to that because that doesn't make sense.
But Allah creates you like that. Allah creates people who are intersex. Like, intersex people exist in this world. And so I think there's a lot of different...
What kind of justification is this? You can't use this justification of, we are created like this. That's fine. I spoke to a homosexual...
Yeah, I think the argument...
This
is, I think, the only part of the video I'll kind of agree with him with. I think the argument that you're created like that, so it's fine, is a little weak. It's a weak argument. I think there can be stronger. I think I gave stronger arguments that he's just not paying attention to.
But I think the reason why it's seen as a weaker argument is, again, this, like, need that's placed on marginalized people to have to defend their existence.
My dear sister, I'm not trying to be harsh on you, but please don't come and try to change the religion. With all due respect, look, if you want to be like that, at least come and say it's haram, like that sister who, when it came to the hijab, she said, look, I don't wear it. But this is what Allah...
You want me to submit to your interpretation. That's what he's asking me to do. Don't change the religion, aka don't change how I view the religion and how people in power and people who have dominated the halls and the institutions of Islam. Don't change how we believe in this. Don't change what we say is right.
Yeah,
you know that's what he's saying.
Yeah, that is what he's saying. And
because you're not engaging with the scholars, with the scholarship that's out there that challenges these mainstream normative ideas of thinking.
Anybody that says the act of homosexuality is not a sin is a kafir. Kafir. I'm not talking about her. I'm talking anybody that comes and says an act of homosexuality is not a sin, you are a kafir.
Commit.
It's as simple as...
If you're going to come and try to have this conversation, you're going to have to do way better than these hadiths that you're basing this off of.
Yeah, like, rooted in the Quran. Like, that's the common ground that we have.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point, that the only common ground that we can start to have a conversation about this with has to be the Quran. You may ascribe to Hadith, but there are millions of Muslims out there who do not, because quite frankly, there isn't enough evidence or proof that what is actually being declared in these Hadiths has actually been said by the Prophet.
Where's the evidence for this? That the there is no evidence for this. It's very weak. It's conjecture. There's no peer-reviewed study that says that you are born gay. It's completely false. And she hasn't brought anything to the table. Again,
no problem. Incest, necrophilia, incest. Yeah, can you allow them? If they came and said to you, look, wallahi, go to this woman.
Let's not talk about incest
and tell her that I have if a man came and said I have inclination on necrophilia,
it's not.
I don't know, like sex. It's not like
that's also the thing. Like it's not even about. That's why the term homosexual is misleading.
It falls short every time.
All these labels fall short because it's not about sex. It's about a loving partnership with another human being. It's about seeing someone else's soul as yours because we're one. That's what it's about.
I would say to the sister that she needs to speak to somebody of knowledge and possibly say a shahada again.
You read someone of knowledge, bro. Like, there are people of knowledge who don't agree with you. Just because they don't agree with you doesn't mean they're not people of knowledge. Like, that's a very conceited, arrogant... That's the word I think I've been looking for this whole... Like, they're very arrogant. Like, we're all in the same boat. We're here to learn. We're here to grow. We're here to love each other. We're here to be in relationships with each other. Maybe you don't see it like that, but I do. I think that's what Allah's calling me to do. So let me do that. Let me do that in peace. Let me do that in community with people who agree with me in that. I'm submitting to Allah by doing that. And that's my relationship with Allah. And you can't read my heart and tell me that it's wrong or that I'm a kafir. You can't, like, you can believe that, but that can't be manifested in our material world. That can't be manifested in not having leadership positions at the masjid, and not being able to even have space at the masjid, and being looked at like I'm a freaking alien,
or like
being policed of how I'm dressing, or that my hijab isn't the right. Like, the essence of life is that we're changing. Like, that
constantly.
And like that's the thing. Like, you're being so resistant to change is being resistant to reality. Like, the reality is change. Like, we're not going to be the same as we were yesterday. And if we are, that's sad because that means we're not growing in our knowledge. Like, we're always supposed to be growing. And the more you learn, the more you realize you didn't know what you didn't know. And you guys don't know what you don't know. Right? I can't fault you for that. That's okay. But I can fault you for not putting in the effort and making these very idiotic, arrogant statements on the internet for views, for your viewership, or for whatever reason you think you're doing this. Anything else?
No. Let's close out with the dua.
Alhamdulillah, you are beyond me.